From the School of Journalism and Broadcasting at Western Kentucky University, I'm Devin Hall, with today's Revolution 91.7 Platform Report, where we hear from you and the community about problems and issues facing the Bowling Green area. Today's topic for discussion is ALS, also known as Lou Gehrig's disease. Many of you have likely seen the videos that have surfaced on social media. These videos show people of all ages drenching themselves with ice water, but many wonder the reason behind it. This viral trend became known as the Ice Bucket Challenge. All over the internet, friends, family, coworkers, and more challenged each other to have a bucket of ice thrown on them to simulate the symptoms of ALS. However, if nominees do not participate by accepting the challenge within 24 hours, they are obligated to donate $100 or more. I went around campus and I asked students if they knew what the Ice Bucket Challenge was and if they knew what it was for.
I participated a couple months ago, and by doing so, it really opened my eyes to what this disease was. I knew about it before, but to actually have the act of going through and having the ice water rushed over your head, it just really puts everything all into perspective of what they really go through, because this happens to them multiple times. Like, it's not just a one-time deal like the Ice Bucket Challenge.
I would guess that most people don't know what ALS is, and because of that, they didn't really understand the purpose or the goal of the Ice Bucket Challenge.
Joining me tonight to continue our discussion about ALS is Jennifer Houston, Project Manager from the Kentucky chapter for ALS.
My name is Jennifer Houston.
And what do you do, Jennifer?
I am the now Project Manager for the Kentucky chapter.
Okay, great. And as a member of the Kentucky chapter, what do you do on a day-to-day basis?
As a member of the association, we actually have a very limited staff. We only have a staff of 4 members, 2 of them being care services staff members and 2 actually being operational staff members, myself and our executive director. So unlike a for-profit company, you actually end up doing a lot of things that you maybe didn't anticipate doing, and there's a lot more not as much cross-training, and you're more responsible for a lot of things to make the company run day-to-day, or the organization run day-to-day. So, and it's never the same. So maybe one day I'll be in the office and I'll just be doing data entry and answering phones and monitoring emails, and another day I'm rolling up my sleeves and we're doing a golf outing, or we're doing a health fair, or we're doing, a volunteer recruitment day, or maybe we're doing a patient event or patient visit. So you never really know from day to day what you're going to be doing differently than the day before. And I think that's another part that makes the job, an exciting job, and really makes you want to get up and go to work the next day, because you really never know what you're going to end up doing, but you ultimately always see the result of your work and what the organization does and what it does in the community, and how it's ultimately helping our patients and our families and our caregivers that have been affected by ALS.
Right. And how did you get involved? Were you inspired by something, or were you just looking for a job?
I unfortunately do not have a great inspirational story like that. But I actually, Mary Bacon, our executive director, she had recruited me as just an administrative assistant, helping with some event planning and helping with the walks, but primarily to help, answer the phones and do the data entry, just so the day-to-day could happen for the office.
Right.
And after I was hired on in April of 2008, and our largest walk, which is the Louisville Walk, was held in May, was my first experience in coordinating, organizing, volunteering, staffing a walk, much less working for a nonprofit organization. So I knew absolutely nothing going into it. Everything that I learned from Mary, and she just told me, this is what you're going to go in doing. Do not lose this area. This is your sole responsibility. So that's what I came in doing. And now it's 6.5 years later. I do everything from manning our website as our webmaster to doing all of our social media to doing our printed collateral material and design. I plan all of our walks across the entire state as well as our third-party events. I manage all of our volunteers. Day to day, I still am responsible for as far as, just data entry and processing the mail and answering the phone. When you call our office, you get a real person on the phone. So a lot of
Right.
my responsibilities that I had when I started are still my responsibilities, and they've just grown since then as I've grown in the chapter, and Mary has given me more of those responsibilities.
We'll be back with more from Mrs. Houston when we return after this station break. From the campus of WKU, you are listening to WWHR 91.7. For those of you who are just tuning in, I've been on the phone with Mrs. Jennifer Houston, who so far described her role as project manager of the Kentucky chapter for ALS. So, as far as, being a project manager and being a part of this association, I kind of wonder, a lot of people do not know what ALS is. Can you kind of explain what it is?
Sure. Amyotrophic lateral sclerosis is what ALS stands for, but it is more commonly known as Lou Gehrig's disease. Lou Gehrig was a Yankees baseball player that was diagnosed with the disease in 1939, and he left the Yankees in 1941. And what happens with this disease is it is 100% fatal, usually 2 to 5 years after the time of diagnosis, and that is all a case-by-case scenario because none of our ALS patients ever are affected by ALS the same. We have some patients that have had the disease for 8 to 10 years. We have some patients that, after being diagnosed, pass away within 6 to 9 months. The more common case of ALS that we see, it starts in the fingertips and it starts in the feet, and they may start losing mobility or feeling in their hands and feet, may have a little bit more trouble walking around the house or walking, down the street or driving their car. And then from there it progresses to their arms and then their legs and their limbs and their core. What it does is it just affects the neuromuscular system, which are your voluntary nerves. So everything that you think of that you can control yourself, that's what it affects. So it doesn't affect your brain. It doesn't affect your eyesight. It doesn't affect your hearing. It doesn't affect your organ function. Other than you think about your lungs, you can control your breathing, so it would affect your respiratory system. It doesn't affect your digestive system or your heart or anything like that. So anything that you can think of that you can control, those are the actual muscles that are attacked by ALS. And what happens is those nerves actually die, and those muscles will atrophy, and you can no longer control those muscles, and you never regain control of those muscles. So, and the other type of ALS that we see is a bulbar ALS, and that actually starts in the respiratory system. So a lot of times we will see patients who have bulbar ALS that are able still to walk around and function, but they are no longer able to speak on their own. So they will have to use a communication device or some other type of speech equipment to help them communicate with their family or their caregiver. Or their doctor. And actually that's a part of what we do is we actually will provide medical equipment to our ALS patients out of our equipment loan closet. That's actually one of the services that we offer as an organization. Money that we raise through our organization go towards this equipment loan closet. And we provide anything from communication devices to wheelchairs to walkers, anything that our patients need, some things as little as a gait belt is actually just a belt that goes around the patient, which helps the caregiver transport them from one spot to another without putting any strain on their joints. It's a $50 piece of equipment, but it means the world of a difference to a patient that their muscles are constantly being pulled on, and their joints are constantly being strained, And it also makes it easier on the caregiver without them having to strain their back. We have utensils. There's little things that people don't think about that an ALS patient can't grip a normal fork or a knife. So we actually have special utensils for ALS patients to use, or even ink pens, so they can still write in their own handwriting. So little things from that to large things like wheelchairs. I mean, even our wheelchairs that we have loaned out, or patients that have wheelchairs and Medicare or Medicaid won't cover a battery or anything like that. Batteries for an electronic wheelchair actually cost anywhere from between $500 and $800 just for a battery. That's actually something that we also cover. And by providing that equipment to patients, we're able to ease a little bit of that financial burden, but at the same time, we can offer that to all of our patients across the state and surrounding area that are affected by this disease. And that makes it a little bit easier for them and a little bit easier for their caregiver, and it's one less thing that they have to worry about, and it also provides them with one more resource.
I guess some of us are wondering, I myself, is the disease genetic, or, does it skip generations, or, how does that work?
Sure. We kind of say a combination of all that. There are actually only 10% of cases of ALS are genetic. The other 90% are what they call sporadic cases of ALS, and our military personnel are actually 2 to 3 times more likely to be diagnosed with ALS than a civilian. So we do see a higher prevalency in our military than we do our civilian population. But as far as a familial ALS, which you were referring to as genetic ALS, we only see 10% of cases of people diagnosed with ALS is genetic. And most of the time, like you said, we do commonly see it skip a generation. They are currently doing research. I know that there was a research project that was most recently done where they were able to test and find out and locate the gene that was being carried on for ALS. But just because someone has the gene doesn't mean that they will actually be diagnosed with ALS. It just means that they carry that gene that is common with familial ALS. So that's another test that they're able to do for some patients and some of their family members to find out if that's something that they carry, to see if there's a possibility that they could be diagnosed with ALS in the future. But then again, it's so uncommon, with only 10% of cases being genetic, to find out if, even if you do carry the strand, the possibility of you actually having the disease.
We'll be back with more from Mrs. Houston about how ALS is more prevalent in military personnel when we return after this station break. From the campus of WKU, you are listening to WWHR 91.7. For those of you who are just tuning in, I've been on the phone with Mrs. Jennifer Houston, who described different forms of ALS. I had no idea that it was more common in military personnel. That's so interesting.
Yeah, and we actually have a huge partnership with the PVA, which is the Paralyzed Veterans Association. We have a great relationship with Ricky Grant, who actually heads up the PVA in Kentucky, and we're able to use Ricky as a resource for a lot of our veterans and a lot of our family members, because I believe it was 2008, the CDC deemed that ALS was a military-related disease, whereas before it was not, and they were not getting any coverage or assistance or anything like that after serving our country and coming back, or patients that we had that served in World War II and came back and were being diagnosed with ALS so many years later. They were saying that it wasn't related. And finally, the CDC, there was enough evidence supporting that our military veterans that were coming back were being diagnosed with ALS, and at a higher rate than civilians that were here in the United States. And they recognized it as a service-related disease, and now they cover our veterans 100% for all of their medical costs and medical needs. So now our veterans are getting the recognition for their service and their sacrifice, and getting the help that they need, as well as providing their families with the help that they need. So we're really appreciative of the CDC and everything that they've done. They actually developed a database. It's called the ALS National Registry, and you can go on there as a patient or go on there as a caregiver to register a patient, and they're constantly updating the questions and the surveys on there as far as geographical area and your family history and your lifestyle. And they're hoping to be able to take that information and all these research studies that are being done through the government, that they can find some type of pattern that can hopefully lead us to finding a cause, which would lead to a treatment and hopefully one day a cure for the disease. So a lot of things have really spanned from the CDC as far as their focus on ALS and on Lou Gehrig's disease, and really helping to assist us in finding out what's causing ALS and finding patterns, which has been the biggest frustration, I believe. I mean, we're talking about Lou Gehrig, who passed away from ALS over 75 years ago, and we still know nothing about this disease and what's causing it. So we're really hoping that that's going to open a window to finding a treatment for this disease.
Yeah, I was going to say it's really interesting because it is 2014 and we have so many things that are, allowing us to look into diseases and find cures, and, it's ALS we've gone, further in finding, ways to help these people, but we haven't found a cure, and, this is what we're fighting for. And, kind of to transition, is there a way to receive an early diagnosis, if it's possible that you may have the disease?
There is no way to pre-test if you're going to have it or not, and that's another issue that we have with our patients. And a lot of times with the symptoms, they're like, oh, it's just me getting old, or it's just me getting clumsy, or it's arthritis, or it's carpal tunnel. And we see so many patients that self-diagnose themselves for a long time that they don't even go to the doctor. And then when they go to the doctor, it gets diagnosed as something else, or it gets misdiagnosed, and it gets mistreated. And so that prolongs the symptoms, and they're continuing to be debilitated by this disease, not knowing what it is, because there is no test for ALS. You can't just go in to your doctor and say, I think I have MS, or I think I have ALS, can I take a test? The process of diagnosing someone with ALS is actually a series of tests that rule out a number of diseases by process of elimination. And once they get to that last diagnosis, like if it's not this, then it is ALS. And at that point, we hear so many patients that are like, at that point, I was hoping I had this other disease just so I would not be diagnosed with ALS, because I knew what that meant. So as of right now, and especially because it is a neurological disease, there is no just positive test. You can't go in and take a vial of blood and be like, yes, you have ALS. It's a series of painstaking tests that are done in order to get that diagnosis, which is a pretty lengthy process. And at that point, you have to go to a neurologist or a specialist that specializes in those testing. And we're really working to educate both our community as well as our doctors in our community, and educate them and provide symposiums and places that they can go to be educated on the symptoms and know what to look for in order to start diagnosing and seeing the symptoms earlier on, so they can get a more quicker diagnosis. Because there is no quicker process, but if we can get them to a specialist quicker and educate the community to understand the signs of ALS, we can possibly get people diagnosed early, so we can make sure they're getting the equipment they need get in touch with our organization. Make sure they know what resources are available to them, that we can provide those resources.
Right.
So we're not hearing, a year and a half to 2 years later that someone was diagnosed with ALS and they're just getting in touch with our organization. They already are needing a wheelchair, or they're already needing a speech device because they can't communicate with their family anymore. And they've been going on that whole time without that needed equipment.
We'll be back with more from Mrs. Houston when we return after this station break. From the campus of WKU, you are listening to WWHR 91.7. I'm Devin Hall, and I've been talking with Mrs. Jennifer Houston about her role and knowledge in terms of the disease ALS. What are your thoughts on the recent viral ice bucket challenge and how it, was kind of spread around to raise awareness?
Oh, it's been absolutely amazing. I mean, this was a grassroots effort by an ALS family, and that's why I think it was so successful, because it wasn't an advertising gimmick. It wasn't something created by a marketing department. It wasn't a campaign that was put on. It was a grassroots effort through social media, and that's why I think it was so successful. But the fact that ALS got to be the center of this huge advocacy effort, and just the amount of people that responded, it was unforeseen. No one could have seen this coming. The national office was nowhere near prepared for something like this to happen, which was amazing in itself. And I think it showed that we weren't prepared for this, and we really weren't behind it, because if we had, we would have had all these communications ready to go and everything, and we're all floundering to try and respond to all the media and all, and it was absolutely amazing. And we couldn't have paid for the amount of awareness that it raised and the amount of people that responded and got involved on a local level. We had a number of people that showed up at our upcoming walks and have reached out to our chapter regarding volunteering and what can they do and what upcoming events we have, and joining our care services team, even just being a resource to patients. We have people who are contacting us that they had a loved one that passed away from ALS 10, 15, 20 years ago, and they want to know what they can do more. So I think it also, as a point of reaching to people that had not been aware of the disease before or educated about the disease, I also think it really reinvigorated a lot of people that either were already involved with an ALS association chapter, or may have been, and they kind of fell off the grid, and really reinvigorated them to get re-involved. And I think it re-energized a lot of people about how important it is to stay involved. And yes, your loved one may be gone, but there are so many people that are struggling with their fight right now and going through their journey with ALS, that's important to give them hope and let them know that they're not alone. And we saw a lot of people step up and get re-involved with the chapter because of that.
That is absolutely amazing, and I was able to participate in the Ice Bucket Challenge, and it was amazing. I don't know that I've ever had that kind of feeling before, being able to donate and just be a part of something that's a lot bigger than, I'll ever be. And it's really great that you were able to talk to us about ALS today and just really educate our listeners today. And it was amazing talking to you. Thank you so much for all of your time. And
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Have a good night. Bye-bye. We've been talking with Mrs. Houston about her thoughts on the viral Ice Bucket Challenge. From the School of Journalism and Broadcasting at Western Kentucky University, I'm Devin Hall, with today's Revolution 91.7 Platform Report, where we hear from you and the community about problems and issues facing the Bowling Green area.